All right, I have a great show for you today. I've brought back a show favorite, Judge Joe Brown, to help me understand the political weaponization against Donald Trump and the different court cases that he's involved with. Judge Brown, thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for coming back on the show. Um, we're only a couple of days into Donald Trump's criminal trial, this misdemeanor for his bookkeeping that's now been elevated to a felony by District Attorney Alvin Braggs in New York. We're only 2 days in. Alvin Braggs has already threatened to arrest Donald Trump and jail him. Judge Merchan has already threatened to arrest Trump and jail him. What are your thoughts on this New York trial with Donald Trump happening right now?
It's a circus. First off, it should not have been brought. It's we have since the Constitution was ratified 1789, we have 235 years of American history where a lot worse has occurred and something like this has not been done. One of the primary reasons it has not been is because you have the Bill of Rights that protects citizens from the use of government authority for political purposes. There is no way of getting around the appearance of impropriety that is suggested by the obvious involvement of all of the parties in this in a bigger political question. It's like, do you want what I would term the normalcy of a Donald Trump in the White House, where the American values and principles are pushed, where you have strong masculinity, or do you want more of this slide where something very bad is being done about duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, sense of purpose, cause, effect, law, order, public peace, and dignity? The family, womanhood, childhood, manhood. And we have been drifting rather far afield from that. So our cities have gone to hell. Our economy is in tatters. We are being told by the Defense Department that we've got maybe a year and a half, 2 years before there's some shooting between us and the People's Republic of China and Taiwan. We've got this mess over in the Middle East. We've got people over there who would love to be able to shoot down B-1 bombers, but they can't. But they can walk the 56 miles from the southern border easily or get transportation courtesy of the U.S. government to the Air Force runways where the the B-1s are stationed, and they can bring in RPGs and blow up the 24 active ones that are at that base easily enough. We have military-age Chinese who have come across the border in the thousands. Nobody knows where they are, and they can easily infiltrate. We have more people now angry at the United States than back 20 some years ago, but they don't have to come in and hijack aircraft and do a 911. They're already in place, and nobody seems to want to do about it. We have a thing where we've discovered that most of the American seaports with their heavy lift cranes have discovered that they're made in China, and they have suspiciously some irremovable communications devices. Nobody can figure out what the purpose is for. So we've got a big live mess going on, and we have the thing that's going on in Europe where Putin is saying, okay, we're in Ukraine. We're there, one, to stop resurgent Nazism. And two, we are there to stop the spread of the rainbow cult around the world as though it's some sort of new religion. And three, we've been asked by people who once were proud of the fact that they were part of the Russian Empire and then the Soviet Union. So, and also there's sex trafficking going on that the Russians claim they're trying to stop. So we seem to be coming in on the bad side of a lot of things.
Yeah, Yeah, it's a lot of troubles being thrown at America all at the same time, but it does seem that the justice system seems to be focused on the wrong thing. For example, there's this new trend in New York where men are just punching women in the face, and yet Alvin Braggs continues to focus most of his office's effort on getting Donald Trump on a misdemeanor. As someone who was involved in the judicial system, have you been disappointed in the way that New York's judicial system has behaved?
Very much so. Also, Chicago's, also Fulton County, Georgia. I've been doing some research and bringing on guests on two shows I do with Dana, the real Dana, from Fulton County, and we're getting a load of the tremendous amount of corruption, embezzlement, and misappropriation of public funds that's going on down there, and Fani Willis's involvement in that process. And once again, we've got hundreds of people that have been locked up for far too long who have not been processed or even formally charged with crime. And there were several $1 million worth of funds that went down there to do something about it that got turned into a way to finance going after Trump, and also some personal access to funds that somebody was availing themselves for. And I'm looking at that in New York. One thing that bothers me, hush money. Supposedly, we have Mr. Trump feloniously attempting to hush somebody from embarrassing them. That's not what that offense is supposed to be about. When you're dealing with trying to hush somebody, technically, what is likely to be the case is there is something criminal that would be exposed, that somebody has an obligation to expose, or some civil wrong that should be exposed, and a person is approached and offered money not to expose this criminal or civil wrongdoing. When the embarrassment extends to just reputation, what you have is an approach where if you don't pay me, I'm going to embarrass you. The common popular name for that is blackmail. So the charges are essentially, we're going after somebody for being the victim of a blackmail attempt instead of the blackmailer. You're going after a corporate entity who decided through a board of directors that it would be embarrassing for the corporation as well if this came to light. So to keep us from being embarrassed to our business detriment, we will pay the lady what she requires to keep her mouth shut. So what happens is when they don't disclose this, there is this little thing about the gag provision. And under New York law, if they were candid in their report, they would violate the gag provision by being open about what the payout was for. So, in other words, you've got one person indicted for being the victim of a blackmail attempt, a felony attempt, and another corporate entity for complying with the law after being victimized by a blackmail attempt that was successful. So, the whole thing looks bad. And then the sanction against Trump from speaking out politically about what is obviously a political thing, wherein the judge and his immediate family have such a vested interest through the receipt or control or involvement in the expenditure of millions of dollars to defeat Donald Trump. And he's not supposed to be able to say anything about the obvious involvement of immediate family members of the judge in this mess. So it's like this is right back to square one, where we get into why do we have the Bill of Rights? The Bill of Rights are to prevent the government from using its power to oppress citizens politically. And under the 14th Amendment, that protection was extended to citizens versus what states might do. So it's just horrendous what's going on, where you have these few people who decide that they're going to fix things for the American public, so they won't even be provided the temptation for reelecting Donald Trump as president of the United States. I could just go on with the ludicrous nature of every single one of these prosecutions, anywhere from down in Florida with the so-called confidential records and the requirements that are supposed to go along with that. I could talk about Marbury versus Madison, a U.S. Supreme Court case, 1803, 221 years ago. I could talk about U.S. Department of the Navy versus Egan, EGAN, 1988, where the U.S. Supreme Court has already resolved the issue in favor of the president. We have the Archivist Act, which would fall under Marbury versus Madison, which would be an unconstitutional usurpation of a president's authority. And the U.S. Supreme Court has long held that under the Constitution, the president is the chief diplomatic officer of the United States and also the commander in chief. So he has the last and absolute say on what is to be classified or declassified and how it's to be done. And also, from having read the downloads on the 3 laptops, not one, that belong to Hunter Biden, and seen what's on them, there is a very high likelihood that the brouhaha over getting these records back is because they are very incriminating to the Obama-Biden administration at the time. So, yeah.
Okay.
There is that. And then this whole thing with the bozo here in New York on the civil thing, shutting down Trump's businesses because he decided that the defendants engaged in some wrong when they didn't show any victim. That's like somebody saying, hey, Judge Brown wrote you a bad check. No, he didn't. I took the check to the bank, presented it, and I got my money. No, he did. No, that's all right. It's a bad check, but I got my money. Well, you see, what they did for this case in New York is to say that, for example, you go in to get a second mortgage on your house, and you say, my house is worth $750,000. My house is worth $1.5 million. That's your claim. The bank can say, no, we'll take $600,000 as a value, or 1.1 million, whatever it may be. But you're supposed to be penalized because you assert that your home has a higher value. That's the essence of this case. And the banks testified that we do our own independent evaluation. Nothing was done wrong from our perspective. We always do it like this. We got our money on time, and we consider it sound business. But the judge says no. For example, this thing where they elaborate on the evaluation of Florida property, Millargo, it's only worth $13 million. Well, hell, vacant lots around the place start at 10 and go up to 20 million, and you've got 55 and $80 million properties around the course, and you want to say with no testimony from experts, anything that this was worth 13 million. In your humble opinion, it's 13 million and this is fraud. See, that is going to be overturned on appeal. Probably the basis is going to be the verdict was inconsistent with the evidence because there was none. And statements and remarks of counsel, in this case, the Attorney General, Letitia James, are not evidence. They're only remarks that are designed to assist in interpreting the law that's supposed to come from the court and the evidence that's supposed to be adduced from the witness stand, and there was none. So we've got a farce, and they're trying to use the authority of the courts inappropriately to keep Trump from being able to campaign vigorously. There is no reason why the request to continue this case should not have been granted, except the tie up Mr. Trump during a crucial period of the campaign season, so that, okay, we'll probably get this thrown out, but by then it will be too late. And we get senile Joe Biden and word salad Annie in the observatory to run the country. And again, it can all go to hell and we will get nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I don't fully understand the judicial system, so help me and my viewers understand. So Letitia James, she's the attorney general. Alvin Braggs is the district attorney, but would she be working behind the scenes and feeding information and ideas to Alvin Braggs in order to get Trump on this other misdemeanor?
Yes, that's exactly what the case is. And they know they have no case. This is just a pretext to tie him up so that his campaign season will be compromised.
Okay.
And technically, it's under New York law. I'm not trying to elaborate on it, but just as an observation, this is all probatable anyway. So he's not going to jail. And if somebody puts him in jail, it would be an absolute travesty and it would be an automatic habeas corpus situation. And this thing, it's a bad precedent. I studied international law for a long, long time, and I've been doing this for more than 50 years. And what I'm looking at is very similar to what was going on in Nazi Germany in the 1930s and fascist Italy during the same time periods, late 20s on up. And I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, I think most people would agree with you. Okay, now you've been a judge. You were known for being fair, but looking for the facts. Excellent track record. This Judge Juan Merchan, his wife's social media profile is a picture of Donald Trump behind bars. As you brought up earlier, the daughter is a fundraiser for many politicians, 100% of them Democrats, but she raised money for Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and Representative Adam Schiff, who single-handedly perpetuated this idea of Russia collusion based on his position in the House of Representatives. I'm doubting that Merchan is going to recuse himself, but is there an outside party that could review or verify this and then they remove him from being the judge?
The Supreme Court of the state could. Well, in New York, everything's called the Supreme Court, but their highest level appellate court could. What's likely to happen is after this is over, the judge is going to have to answer some ethics questions to maintain his status as a sitting judge or his law license. Now, I went to 30 years worth of judicial conferences where we would have to go 16 college unit hours a year, every year. And one of the more popular or unpopular topics, because we had to pay attention to it, was the matter of ethics and the efficacy of what you or your family members are doing or saying on social media and how it impacts the appearance of impropriety. That's the phrase. You see, America's legal system works on confidence that the public has in it. And when you force on the public things that appear to be inappropriate, you destroy that confidence in their legal system. Even if what you're doing is not actually wrong or compromised, if it looks to be so, it should not be. So when you have a spouse, a child, a sibling, close associates that you are dealing with on a daily basis who obviously have a stake in the outcome of a matter before you, you are supposed to remove yourself. It's called recusal with an R. So obviously, that's not what we have here. His wife is showing Donald Trump behind bars. His daughter is raising millions of dollars of funds to defeat him. And he's got to go home, and he's not that old, I assume. To be crude about it, he still wants to get laid. And you know what's the old phrase? Happy wife, happy life. So he's got to keep household decorum and good feelings around the house. So that suggests to the public that something is way wrong here. And from his protectiveness, where his daughter has opened herself wide open to political commentary because of her statements and her activities and fundraising and other things, he has effectively restricted this man's ability to campaign for U.S. president by restricting what he can say in reply to what a family member of this judge is putting out there every day. See, that's just wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Trump even wrote, every day people are writing lies about me, and I don't have the ability to even defend myself. Where's my freedom of speech? Is that the purpose of the gag order, is to limit his ability to even defend himself outside of court as well?
Exactly. Though it may be that the judge is trying to protect his daughter or family members, and what he is doing is he is not impartial and neutral and objective in this. And perhaps if I gave him a lot of charity, because of his intimacy with the parties involved, he does not realize what it looks like to someone who's not so involved with these people.
Okay.
And see, that's the appearance of impropriety. In other words, you just don't do that. Your daughter put herself in this political arena. Now you say that the target is not to be allowed to reply? What is this? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and this is kind of happening down in Georgia as well, with District Attorney Fani Willis, where all of a sudden she became the focus of the lawsuit, and there was like a mini investigation where it was learned about her behavior with one of her employees, the amount of money she was paying, the use of state funds, federal funds, grant funds. Do you see her being removed at any point, or do you think Judge?
I think she's got problems. In the 50 plus years I've been doing this, this is about the worst dumb crook move I've ever seen. I had a certain idiot that was in front of me. Let's just put it this way: several idiots, and what they were doing was there was a multiple homicide, and these fools Xerox copies of the news articles, a lot of copies, and personally autographed them with the notation that they did it. And that was my nominee for Dumb Crook. But I think Fanny has taken that. She put her hand on her hip, did that snake charm thing with her neck and head, and got on the stand and incriminated herself in IRS infractions, violation, embezzlement, misappropriation of funds. And to make a long story short, what it looks like is she and her associate, Attorney Wade, entered into a scheme where they would defraud the state, and he would funnel funds to her. And also, from what I'm picking up in terms of the embezzlement and misappropriation of funds in Fulton County, she would funnel cash back to him coming from that source so it could be laundered. So now she's opened herself up to money laundering, RICO, which is what she has against Donald Trump. And she's got herself in a situation where she has multiple serious complaints against her with the Bar Ethics Committee, which could cost her law license. She's got problems with IRS, and we've got a situation where $7.5 million went to her to expedite prosecution of people who've been long in jail, and that money was diverted to other purposes. Some of it to the prosecution of Donald Trump, some of it you can't tell where. Also, there are $56,000 in cash payments that should have been receipted or recorded that were not. There was even the very stupid move of bringing in a waiter from a restaurant in Napa Valley, California, to give an affidavit that she paid more than $400 cash for a meal, not including the tip. And we have the stuff that's come out through Mr. Wade's divorce proceedings, wherein there are listings of who was on what airplane and what seat sitting next to who, and who went to D.C. with who stayed in a certain hotel or so with who. That's all been denied on the witness stand by the Attorney General. The Judge McAfee, though he's very young, I would give him a lot of kudos because he's doing an outstanding job. And I know what he's doing. He's letting Miss Fani set herself up, and I picked up 8 times when he was trying to unobviously caution her about the Fifth Amendment that she seemed to ignore. So it's going to be kind of strange. Well, I didn't know. Well, you're the Attorney General for the district and you don't know about the Fifth Amendment? And then he invited the defendants to petition him for a gag order, which he said he would grant. He wrote a 24-page order on the subject, and he called her a liar at least 5 times. He used mendacious or mendacity, which is a synonym for lying. He accused her of misleading the court, deceiving the public, misappropriating funds, and that's going up. So it's like it doesn't get any worse than that. And that is an invitation for the bar committee to look into the matter. Now, she's been going to this pulpit in a church talking about how she's the victim of white supremacy, but it is a mostly black county. The sheriff is black. The head of the police department's black. The district attorney, her, is black. There's nobody white to account to. So where is the white supremacy, except for the fact that you are acting very stupid and you have a suspicious number of contacts with the White House, which suggests that you're not being independent and objective, which led to the appointment of a supposedly objective, independent prosecutor who turns out to be sleeping with the district attorney. Her father, George Floyd, testified that as far as he knew, she was shacking with this guy who had what did he put it, a daytime government job, but was otherwise a DA. And then we find out she's sneaking out with Wade at night and taking trips with him. We also find out from the citizens of Fulton County that she was accused when she campaigned for DA of having had an affair with the previous DA, whom she seems to have thrown under the bus. And part of her campaigning was there would be no more sexual escapades in the DA's office, which seems not to be the situation. She claims it was just an office romance that arose after he got on. But in pragmatic terms, that makes it worse. If you had something going with the man before he got the appointment, you might say, well, it's no longer there. We just didn't want to embarrass him during the divorce. But if you say this arose afterwards, 1, you are an officer of the court, so you know you have to refrain from such activity. 2, if you slip, you're supposed to report it to the judge since you're acting as an officer of his court. 3, you have to report it due to ethical problems. 4, you did not report it. You kept it concealed. And 5, you sat there and went after people for attempting to expose it. Now, let's look at him. Fani testified that she was suffering from financial hardship, and she was at a great loss after financing her campaign to be elected as DA. Well, first off, she said she took $50,000 out of a 401k. She only reported 19,000 of that to the state, which left off 31,000 that was unreported. Next thing is when she took it out of the account, she was supposed to declare that to IRS, and it was taxable income, which she concealed. That's a problem with IRS. Next thing we have is it turns out she had a lien against her property in the amount of $8,400, the execution of which was held up because she said she did not have the money involved. But now we turn to find that she had $15,000 in the cookie jar for back money that she could have used any time to go pay IRS.
All that cash in the house.
Yeah, and it's a knowing misstatement to a federal agency or agent, which is a felony, by the way. And we also now have pending charges coming out of Maryland because she unlawfully recorded a conversation she had with the defense attorney for the one black defendant caught up in this that was kept in jail so he couldn't make a bond. So now she has criminal charges pending against her. So this ought to be very interesting in terms of the incrimination that she caused herself and the revelation of activities that were previously swept under the rug. It's real bright, like, you big dummy, how can you do this?
Yeah.
So but you see, this is the same kind of thing you're getting with Letitia James. This is the same kind of thing you got with the state's attorney in Chicago with the Jussie Smollett thing, where she recuses herself from the case because she's got such family connections, because she's been having lunch and dinner with Smollett's family. And by the way, guess who his aunt is by marriage?
Oh.
The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. So also, I've talked and interviewed to the detectives on that, since you wanted to say stuff. They had video of Smollett buying that noose at a costume shop during the Halloween season. They've got him on video buying that. He discussed it at this sports club he was with many people there, how he was going to set Trump up in MAGA. And they told on him. And you've got video camera stuff of them rehearsing this stuff from street cameras around. And on the day in question, it's actually on security cameras in the area. You can see him putting the noose around his own neck when he goes to pull off this mess. And it's hooked up with the so-called Emmett Till anti-lynch bill that Cory Booker and Kamala Harris were trying to get passed. That had been introduced in 1997 and tabled. It has nothing to do with lynching, doesn't have anything to do with Emmett Till. And what it did do was it introduced sexual orientation into the lexicon of American law on the federal level. It's an interesting thing. Under the act, lynching, which everyone assumes to be a mob lynching somebody and hanging them or killing them. One, you no longer require a mob. One person can be guilty of lynching. Two, you no longer have to have a homicide. It can simply be a beating. And the obvious type of case is let's say somebody broke up with his girlfriend or wife and he's feeling down. He goes to a club, gets a drink, and what he thinks is an attractive woman starts dancing with him, and they're exchanging spit in the shadows and whatever. And then he notices that the woman has mounted an erection, and he goes, wait, what are you? And he hits the guy in the jaw. That's now federal lynching that brings in the FBI and some other things. And, you know, it's kind of absurd what they're doing to American law. There's another thing you need to be aware of in this. On the East Coast, there is a move afoot to change felony rape to include rape by seduction. So if you say have met some woman that attracts you, you attract her, and you do decide to go out on a date, you go to a good restaurant, wine, candlelight, it's spring, you go for a walk in the park, you hold hands, and it's my place or yours. You go there, you deal with foreplay, the clothes come off. Well, that's now supposed to be felony rape by seduction. You're supposed to have, according to this new trend, hey, look, I haven't been laid in a while. You want to go out and do a fine dinner, walk in the park, and then have sex. You're supposed to agree to that up front rather than nature taking its course. And they want you to stop. Okay, do you still want to go ahead with this? Okay, we're in the middle of this. Can we keep going? Okay, can we finish up with this? Otherwise, it's supposed to be rape. Now, obviously, that is not going to do well for the next human generation being generated when the guys are going to say, you know, like, wait a minute. If I go, well, this ain't going to happen if I try to lay it out up front. And if we do the ordinary courtship thing, it's bad. Now, I had a mother-in-law, this is side of a side comment, but it illustrates the point. And she operated a beauty salon for 35 years, had 6, 7 chairs in it. And I used to have the unpleasant task of going over to try and run errands. Okay. This is through my first wife. And I would listen to the conversations that were being had in the salon chairs. And let's just say ladies like to boy watch. They like to look at the guys. And I know being a man, it used to be a favorite sport, girl watching. Now nobody does that. And I ran into a friend I hadn't seen for a while, and he said, Joe, he said, one of the most embarrassing things ever happened to me. I was in Atlanta Airport, and I was up in the Delta Lounge, and I saw the most beautiful woman I thought I'd ever seen in my life, and I got up enough nerve to go talk to her, and it turned out to be a boy. And you see, that throws off the whole human scheme, you know, birds, bees, lions, tigers, wolves, whales, you know, they court, they go through this dance, but now you can't do it. So I don't know what the devil's going on right now. I would not like to be a young man today. I would not like it because it wouldn't be much fun. And I'm a bachelor again at my age, and I go out, but you know, the ladies my age and slightly younger, from I'd call that 50 and up, they complain about stuff is just not working in the dating game anymore because of some of the things that are put in. So we've got this dynamic going on around the country. And I think the real opposition to Trump is this. He is the emperor that is not letting the new religion be imposed on the country. Are you familiar with Buddhism?
Yes.
It's an ancient and honorable religion, but it does not have a God per se. It's secular. It's a system of philosophy. If you take LGBTQIA plus, outside of the homosexual activity that is implied by that, that's okay. Keep that in your bedroom. But it's a system of philosophy that some are calling the rainbow cult that, not surprisingly, when you get into it, has a number of gay people who are adamantly opposed to it. And there is an attempt to impose this rainbow cult as the official religion of the country. If you're a Christian, you know, you can't have a nativity scene in City Hall or in the school anymore. Somebody will file a lawsuit and complain. But there's a rainbow up on the wall in the school. You can't put the six-pointed Jewish star on a government building, but you can put the rainbow one. You can't put the crescent in the star for Islam on a government building, but you can put the rainbow one. You can't put the Hindu six-armed God there, but you can put the rainbow. You can't put a symbol of Buddha in an official place, but you can put the rainbow. And grooming children in school is becoming a very big problem. And it's not just to get them to become sexual objects, it's to capture their minds. Now, you may have had the thing with mama telling you, if you don't go to church on Sunday, you can't go anywhere the rest of the week. Okay, we've been through that. So you were 3, 4 years old when you can start remembering it, and you fell asleep and you were bored out of your mind, but you went. Okay. And by the time you were 7 or 8, you were a believer. Well, let's see, starting at 3, preschool, 4, 5, kindergarten, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in elementary school, they aren't going 1 day a week. They're going 5 days a week, 6 hours a day, where they are propagandized with this rainbow thing. So by the time they get 10 or 11 years old, they are converts and devout believers in the system of philosophy. And the system of philosophy, aside from the sexual, is based on you have no obligations to anything. You have no duty. You have no responsibility. There is to be no shame nor guilt for doing something outside of the pale. You have no duty, honor, you accountability to anybody. You have no need to be dependable. It's just what you want. Do what you want to do, not what you ought to do. There's no purpose, no cause, no morality, no ethics. It's all a hedonistic pleasure bowl where anything can be done. And everything is supposed to exist for your benefit. You're entitled to whatever you want. You don't have to earn anything. You can dummy down the education because somebody won't pay attention. Mother is not having the child, or father's not having the child sit at the kitchen table and doing homework, but they're entitled to get a certificate of attendance because they wanted to put on the cap and gown and walk across the stage, even though they don't graduate and get a diploma. You have these things. Nobody can run for class president because somebody's feelings might get hurt if they don't win. And then you get out in the real world, which is very highly competitive and is not fair, but everybody expects whatever they want to be handed to them. See, that does not bode well for the future of this country, because right now, technology wise, others are catching up to us. We're not where we were. We have a southern border that's wide open, and we have a mess going on in the Middle East where people would love to shoot down these B-1 bombers, but they can't, where people would love to be able to retaliate against the United States and its people, and now they can because the southern border is wide open. We have a situation where we are giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to illegals, and then they want to change the word so it's not illegal. We have some federal laws on the books about harboring fugitives, and anyone that has committed a crime and is attempting to escape or hide from, or anyone who is attempt to hide them or obstruct their apprehension, is guilty of a federal felony. So everybody involved in setting up these sanctuary cities and areas is conspiring to commit a federal felony and should be vigorously prosecuted. Now, we have a widespread disrespect for the law that is being brewed by what is approved. We have a situation 1/6/21 where there was supposedly an insurrection in Washington, D.C. behind what I classify as misdemeanor trespass by 180 some people. If you want to see the ridiculous, ludicrous nature of that assertion, go to Wikipedia and look up demonstrations and protests in Washington, D.C. historically. Start with the 19th century, go up through the 20th century, and you'll see tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people gathered who got out of line, started burning stuff, broke windows. The cavalry and the army had to be called in. And you've got 180 people that the public, one segment of it is getting into. They were trying to stage an insurrection against the U.S. government, against the mightiest military on the planet Earth, and 180 people are going to violently overthrow the government. And then you've got the ludicrous nature, the accusation against Trump trying to get Pence to disobey the law. Now, let's get to that. There is an act called the Confidence in Elections Act of 1877. It's still good law. As a matter of fact, when this disturbance occurred, January 6th, it was the next thing on the agenda, but Nancy Pelosi tabled it because of the disturbance. What is that? It says if there is an apparent lack of confidence in the electoral process, the vice president shall not certify the electoral college count, but shall instead call for the creation of a select committee. It shall be 5 people from the House, 5 from the Senate, and 5 from the Supreme Court. Said 15-person committee shall take a minimum of 10 days to conduct an independent audit of the election results and such additional time as is reasonably necessary to complete the task and report back to Congress their findings. So, in other words, when Trump supposedly tells Pence, don't do this, he's only following a law on the books that happenstance-wise was the next thing to be considered on the congressional agenda for that very day. Now, the other thing we now find that it's been suppressed, that he attempted to alert military units to stand by for some sort of public disturbance, and we find Nancy Pelosi et al. Got in the way of something being done with that. What are we looking at here? We got a statement in January 2021 that there were no significant discrepancies in the election process. Now we're finding that there were. Shelby County, Tennessee, where Memphis is located, 2 days after the Justice Department issued that finding, got the quarterly report from the Justice Department. It says, once again, the voting machines used in Shelby County, Tennessee, were hopefully corrupted and subject to hack, such that there is no confidence in the validity of the election outcome. So, which one from the same Department of Justice is the true version of facts? That there were no significant problems with the election anywhere in the country, or when it comes to the 14th largest urban area in the country, the machines were hacked, and it's likely that there was no valid election returned. So, which is it? And then you get this absurd thing, getting back to Fani in Georgia. You charge somebody organized crime type stuff, and what they're doing is simply an elections. Now, I guess I'd be guilty of that. 1991, myself and another judge were asked by a certain political faction to review what was going on with an active election. It was in terms of the vote count. In Tennessee, it's calling what we were is official election witnesses. You have to be a state trial judge. So we went in there, and a janitor advised myself and the other judge and our bailiffs in uniform that certain individuals had taken the CD that had the electronic vote count, and they had hidden the CD in a certain desk drawers. He pointed the drawer out. So the other judge and I agreed that a $250,000 bond per person would be appropriate under the circumstances for election tampering. We directed our uniformed bailiffs to go over and secure the individuals. And I said, I tell you what, maybe somebody needs their recollection jogged. And if you find that has happened, we will forget about it. Otherwise, we are going to have some people taken into custody, starting with you, and you. And Judge so-and-so and I have agreed that the bond should be $250,000 apiece if your recollection does not get improved. And I said, gentlemen, find me some votes. That was my very set of words. Find me some votes. Oh, yeah. And they went right over there and got the CD. And the successful candidate for city mayor won by 124 votes. They were saying he lost by 92 otherwise. So I said, find me some votes. They did. So that's all Trump did was the language, find me some votes. Now, some people want to prosecute him because they said that was inappropriate, and that addresses the imprecision of his use of language. But this is from the same people that want folk to have a special pronoun. My general expression on special pronouns is look, I don't even know your name. And if you want me to remember your special pronoun, tattoo it on your forehead, and I'll remember it or be advised of it. But by then, you'll be too big a fool, in my estimation, for me to do anything other than say you got a choice of he, she, or it. So I'm not going to abuse or corrupt the English language for your benefit. I don't even know you. Now, there is this reality thing. That, again, is part of that rainbow cult bit that they're trying to impose on the people. So it's their business under the First Amendment. More power to them, but it's our business under the First Amendment to speak out against that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But they're trying to do this fascist Nazi thing of turning it into a wrong to speak against. Is it the party line or the dynamic of this secular religion? You're speaking heresy, blasphemy. And I think that's very bad for the country.
Yeah. No, that's I've never had it put to me that way. And I think you're right. I think that it is that it's this new religion. In fact, as I was covering the wars, I realized that joining NATO, you have to be tolerant of the LGBTQ movement, or else you can't be a part of NATO. Now, I thought, I don't know what that has to do with a war, but I guess if you want to get money and missiles from the United States, you have to allow that tolerance in your government. So kind of interesting. I'm glad that you brought that to our attention. Judge Brown, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing all this. I can tell you're holding a lot in your mind because you can just recall it so quickly. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to follow you online, what is the best way for them to do that? Where can I point people?
Okay. You can go at Judge Joe Brown TV.
Okay.
You can catch me on Mondays on The Real Dana. That's on YouTube, though they censor us and demonetize us if we talk about politics, even if we don't bring up subjects like this. You can also find us on X Space on Tuesday in the evening and on Thursday and on Friday, though we have had some suspicious problems with iHeart TV, radio, where Blog Talk Radio doesn't work for us to record. I do a thing with Valerie Denise Jones every Friday. It would be 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 6 p.m. And if you're still on, it's a free for all. And we've actually had some very interesting people from a lot of the individuals down in Cobb County. We've had the detectives from Chicago when it came to Jesse Smollett's thing. We've had some of the people involved in a lot of the congressional stuff. So we get people that a lot of individuals aren't used to seeing, but they don't want it known. I'll tell you something else that I found. I did a thing on YouTube with Kwame Brown, and we were talking about stuff like this, and we got 9.8 million views. And then the next day, it dropped down to 6.4. And then it was down to 5.1, and then it went down to 1.4 million. Then it dropped down. Now it's about 880,000. Now it's crazy because this is a thing I'm running into. I still have episodes of my TV show out. And most people don't know it, but I was beating Oprah weekly in the ratings every week for the last 5 years. Phil every day, and me and Judy were running neck and neck. And we all four were in the same CBS syndication unit. But they tried to tamp down that awareness because I was not pushing the Hollywood agenda. But there were a lot of people looking at it. So there are still people looking at reruns of my show on YouTube. So last month, there was 1 week where one episode got 34 million views in 1 week. So somebody's watching, but then you turn around and they want to claim that there are only 900 people watching this thing on YouTube. Like, what the devil? There's another thing on X that I find funny. Is when the boss gets on and has an X space, they take all of the secret algorithms off. So like we'll be on there, Dana and I, and we will have 924 people who are indicated they're on, or it might be not 900, might be 84. And then when Musk gets on and they got to drop the algorithm so the boss doesn't see it, all of a sudden we jump up to 24,000, like, hey, what's going on? And then as soon as he gets off, blink, it just goes right back down because it's turned the algorithms on. See, he probably is running into a bureaucratic thing, which is once you get people installed, you can't go and get in everybody's head and spoon out what they've got, and they may nobody's looking, let me turn this on so I don't like what's being said, or let me go restrict that. So it's a problem. And that is the most troubling thing. And I'll end with that. There is this thing called the First Amendment. The reason it's the first is it's the most important, and that's because the way to prevent violence for political purposes is to invite, encourage, and mandate absolute free and candid speech about things that impact folk. You can't have it where it's a prurient interest thing, pornography or obscenity, but everything else is wide open. It doesn't make any difference. If it hurts somebody's feelings, it's okay. But we've got that thing going wrong today where feelings become more important than governance and righteous development of a public consensus. Last point, this has nothing to do with that. If you want some of the best barbecue sauce you can find, I do have that out. Judge Joe Brown Barbecue, JJBBBQ.com. Go there, you can get some. And if you go on Amazon, you can get it through Amazon.
Okay.
So it's in stores, Judge Joe Brown Barbecue.
I will put that down below, as well as how to find you online. Thank you for giving us of your time. I know how busy you are. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too, sir. Have a good